Okay, we are recording. Welcome to our third episode of Escaping Lockdown. Today we are with David Timis, who is a former student of mine at the University of Glasgow and who has become a worldwide influencer. He has worked for companies like Google and the United Nations and has very strong and valuable views on the future of skills. So, welcome, David. I want to ask you, how did you escape lockdown?
Thank you, Professor. It's a pleasure to reconnect with you after all these years and especially in these interesting times. Lockdown for me actually was an interesting story because it all started with a big wake up call to this new normality. I was in a yoga retreat actually, somewhere in the south of Belgium, in a castle, doing this silence retreat, not speaking, not having any contact with the friends or family on the phone or internet. And literally, the day I got access to all these technologies, I was bombarded with emails about how the world is being turned upside down. So I immediately packed my bags, and the next day I went back home to native Romania, where I'm from, to be with my family and friends during these challenging times, I would say, for all of us.
That's an interesting developing. And how has this time helped you reflect on this time that you worked for Google and how important the skills would be in the near future?
I mean, this time was great for me to both reconnect, as I said, a bit with my roots. I haven't been home for a couple of months in a row in ages, I would say, maybe in 10 years. So that was the first priority for me, to really reconnect with both family and friends from childhood, but then also to really think a bit about what I want to do after this whole crisis is behind us, hopefully, because in a sense, some of the skills I've been working on for a while now, studying again because I'm in a master's now currently at the College of Europe doing public policy. Some of the skills I was learning there, I didn't have a lot of chance to put them into practice. So these days for me was also an opportunity to really put some skills I learned recently to the test. Writing articles about topics I care about the future of work, which is a topic I've been researching over the past couple of years, and I'm becoming increasingly passionate about. So again, a time for recollection and skills building, I would say.
And how did you think the future of work will look like?
I think the future of work is already upon us. I think the COVID-19 pandemic definitely accelerated the transitions we were all already kind of discussing for a couple of years now, if not more. So now teleworking, teleeducation is becoming more of a mainstream thing than just some activity done in some top-level universities or companies. Now, most companies and most universities have been faced with this digital revolution, which has been knocking on their doors for ages, I would say. And it will definitely be a survival of the fittest in a sense. Those who are most prepared for such a transition, such a digital disruption, will be able to come back stronger after this whole pandemic is behind us.
And how do you think that will pan out? Do you mean universities in I don't know, in the UK will survive, or in Europe they will not? What determines that?
I think, based on at least what I've read on the topic from various recognizable publications, would be that most, if you refer just to the educational sector, most universities, the top level ones, top 50, top 100, should have no problem in the sense of navigating this disruption. It will definitely be difficult, but the top universities will face less of a challenge. The issue is with those which had issues or problems attracting students even before. For them now, it's going to be really hard to sell a degree, especially to international students who pay premium compared to what EU students pay within the UK and Europe still. It'll be harder for them to attract these students, and hence they will have, for sure, and unfortunately, financial difficulties. However, this opportunity brought forth by technology, I would say, if used wisely, obviously with probably decreasing the cost or that you would ask for a master's, they could still use this and base their future offering on some of these digital tools that now are becoming more mainstream. So there is an opportunity within this whole challenging situation.
And going back to the skills in the work in the future, do you think that if we all work through Zoom or Teams or whatnot, will their old skills like soft skills be still valuable?
They will be valuable, but definitely it's not an ideal situation to either work or be educated or delivering education via online tools. I think online tools themselves have to be disrupted, and I think there's plenty of entrepreneurs around the world now who are thinking about being confronted with this issue and how to make a tool like Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Skype more useful in this context in which we have no choice but to use them. So I definitely think soft skills, to go back to your questions, are better developed in person, and this will be the case for, I think, some years to come. However, more and more, I think the technology will be able to make it more accessible to learn some of these soft skills, which for some people at the moment, because of cost mainly, it's impossible. Maybe they're stranded in a country in which they don't have access to technology, so they literally cannot get access to the best quality education.
And let me put this situation to you. If you had to go back to Google and start at Google University, how would you do?
I would do definitely. The future of education for me is a future in which educational institutions, universities, or even high schools collaborate more with companies, because the biggest issue I see in the coming years is this discrepancy between what you're taught in university and how impractical it is in some cases. Obviously, there's always a professor, a star professor, who helps out and pulls through and helps out the students to be taught practical skills. But in many cases, and I've seen a few universities and a few educational system, UK, France, now Belgian and Romanian, the problem is we're being too much taught what to think and not how to think. And I think in the future, by collaborating more with companies, universities will be able to better prepare the students for the real life, for the real job market, which is not which doesn't care about how many informations you have or how fast you can Google something, but how you can think critically, how you can analyze big chunks of data and make a presentation, a visual presentation after it, which are really soft skills, which I think will be more and more increasingly more important in the future.
Yeah, but that's tricky because great students like you are happy to be taught how to think critically. But if you're a bit not that fantastic, they really struggle thinking critically, and they basically want spoon-fed material.
Yes, I think this is definitely a challenge, and that's why for me, education and the transformation of education doesn't start in university or in high school. It starts much earlier. Ideally, if you want to really put together a good educational system, you would start with primary school and make sure you have the right system in place with the right sort of teaching staff that will imbue this sort of a environment of desire to learn and not just to be spoon-fed information. So it's very challenging, and I admire your work as a university professor for having to, in a sense, dismantle some of these ingrained habits that some students had, unfortunately, even no fault in acquiring. It was just maybe a bad luck of an educational system or of a professor early on who taught them this way. So I think this is a big challenge especially for higher education, how to change some of these old paradigms.
Okay, we have about 1 minute left. How would you like to see the world after lockdown? What things do you think we should learn from this that we could use afterwards?
I think after lockdown, the best thing to do is to go back a bit to the roots, be it within our lives, personal lives, or within our professional lives, and see exactly what matters most, what brings the most results. If we think about the 20-80 rule, 80% of our work, 20% of our work gives 80% of results. Same with our lives and professional activities. Go back to the roots and really transform, or let's say reanalyze the way you do things in order to optimize it, to make it better for yourself and for those around you, basically.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for all your contribution, David, and hope
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. All the best.